And we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Jacob Falkenberg. I'm the Communications and Member Services Director at Venture Portland. With me today, as always, is our fearless leader, Joy Church. Joy, hey, how you doing?
Good, good. This is great. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Great, yeah. So Joy and I are going to talk today about some board best practices. So this is going to be the first of many board-related trainings and webinars that we're going to be doing over the next year, because this is a topic that I think deserves a ton of time, and boards are evolving, especially with COVID. So a lot of folks are wondering, how do we be the best board we can be given the challenges that we're facing, and how can we best serve the businesses in our district? So we're going to be talking about some basic stuff today, but we also want to hear from you to hear about what your challenges are, so we can answer your questions, but also create future trainings to go into more detail about that. So if everybody is ready, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to just talk about today, and things that we've been hearing that districts have been struggling with, is board recruitment. So things are harder now more than ever. With COVID, businesses are shutting down either temporarily or permanently. So the pool of people you have to get on your board is shrinking, and your board is shrinking. So what's the best way to go about getting some folks involved, engaged, so you can keep the trains running on time? Most of your districts have limited staff, if any, so having a strong board is the only way you're actually going to be able to get things done. So first and foremost, the main thing you want to keep in mind when thinking about board recruitment is you should not be waiting for a time when you need board members to begin doing board recruitment. Board recruitment should be a 365-day-a-year process. It should be on the minds of all the board members as you're interacting with folks and you're meeting folks, and new businesses are coming into the district. Kind of a lot like if you have a shop, how you engage with your customers. You're constantly engaging with them to build your customer base. And you're doing this because it's not something you're just going to ask right away. You have to build that relationship and work up to the point where you're ready to make the ask. So you want to make sure that when you do need somebody, they are ready to come onto the board, and that relationship is solid enough, and they trust you and they understand the organization, where they feel comfortable taking on a role of a board member. The second thing you want to keep in mind is, you're not just looking for somebody with a pulse. You want to find somebody that brings the right skills to the table, that brings a diverse perspective to the organization, and who also has the time to dedicate to the organization. So those three main things, if you have somebody who has a ton of time but nothing to really offer, that's not ideal, and vice versa. So really you're looking for someone who's a good fit. You want to cast a wide net. Does your board currently represent the business mix of the district? Do you have retail, restaurant, service businesses, nonprofit, manufacturing? Is everybody being represented? Does your board represent the demographic mix of your district? Are you a racially and ethnically diverse board? Do you have someone from an anchor business in the district? So if there's a business in your district that is particularly well known or a draw for people from around the city, is someone from that business on the board? That's super important. Are some of the unofficial leaders of the district involved? These are people that are known throughout the community, that people trust, making sure that they have a seat at the table as well. So all things to think about as you're thinking about putting together this list of potential candidates that you want to start developing relationships with, to eventually ask them to join, so they can kind of offer their expertise and help you do the things that you need to do. So also what you want to be thinking about is, what skills are we missing? What do we need to make our board stronger? Is it somebody who's good at social media? Is it somebody who has a financial background that could potentially come in and take over a treasurer role, or help to just maybe advise on the best way we can build our budget and stay on budget throughout the year. It's someone with an advocacy background. So is there a particular issue in the district that your district's been struggling with? Is there somebody that has experience dealing with city hall and bureaus that can get some traction on that? You want to make sure you have a player to fit each position. So think about it as a baseball team. You don't want a team of pitchers or a team of catchers. You want people with a variety of skill sets. Another thing to consider, they could have the greatest skills in the world. They could have all the time in the world. They could be from a business that is highly respected in the district. But do they get along well with others? A board is a team, and one person is not going to carry the team. And if that particular person doesn't get along well with others, they may scare away the rest of the team. So you want to make sure that they're personable, so they don't send the rest of your board running for the hills when they do come on board, and they're willing to cooperate and collaborate. And they're not just going to try and take the whole thing and do what they want to do, but really compromise and really work together for the best of the district. So when you do find someone that you think would be a good fit, don't just ask them right off the bat, and don't wait for them to ask you, because they probably won't. Develop a relationship with a potential board member. So that can be done by inviting them to a mixer or other, Zoom call event that you're doing. Unfortunately, we're not doing a ton of in-person events right now, so there's not a whole lot to choose from. But if you are getting together with your board or your membership, invite them to join along. No pressure. They don't have to do anything really. It's just to kind of give them a taste of what your organization does. You could also invite them to a board meeting to maybe share a few things about their business for a few minutes. That's incredibly invaluable, especially for a new business in a district, to be able to talk about what their business does in front of a group of people. Maybe they can try out being a board member by joining a committee. So if you have an event coming up and there's a committee that's tasked with planning that event, maybe ask them to participate. It's super low pressure. It could be maybe just for a month or two, but it really kind of gives them a chance to test the waters to see if it's something that they want to do. It's a short-term opportunity. And when you do get to the point where you're ready to make the ask, do it in person if you can. Tell them the reasons why you think they would be a good fit for the board. This can be done over a socially distanced coffee. Find out why they're interested in joining the board. What do they want to get out of the experience? People join boards for different reasons, as we see here in the chat, and you want to make sure that you're catering to that, and you're fulfilling those expectations that they have. So what are they trying to do? Is the social aspect? Is it the community building aspect? Do they want to learn leadership skills, or they just want to learn how a nonprofit works? Find out and cater to those interests. So those are just a couple of things to keep in mind for board recruitment. And when you do actually get them to join the board, thankfully, you're going to want to set those expectations. And to talk about some board member responsibilities, I'm going to kick it over to Joy. Joy.
Thanks, Jacob. Right, board recruitment, it's so true. It's all year long. Just as small business owners, we don't hope that, oh, you should be my customer right now, give me money. You're developing relationships all of the time, right? The same goes for your boards, where you're developing relationships so that when you do have an opening, you've got great people in mind. I think that, one of the things that we've been talking with some of you about is thinking of who you would like to see as your dream team, right? Put together a list of people and businesses in your district that you want to start chatting with now, so that when you have board positions open, you can say, oh, we've got this list of people that we'd love to have on our dream team board. I think that's a really good strategy. Board members' responsibilities, I think that gets lost sometimes because we get so worried about meeting our minimum requirements. So each of you on your boards have bylaws, and typically in those bylaws, it'll tell you the minimum number of board members you have to have. So sometimes you feel this pressure to just get a warm body in there. And unfortunately, that can go sideways really quickly if that board member does not understand that, you know, you're a board, you have board responsibilities, and that includes what's called the duty of care. And so representing your board, your members are your ambassadors, whether they have that hat on or not. They're viewed as the ambassador for your district day in and day out. Every time they speak, they're messaging they're representing your board. So it's really important that board members understand that. And I think particularly now with COVID-19, as we do see boards getting smaller, that engagement is crucial. So board members need to be able to commit to doing work. It is not enough for board members to show up for the board meeting every month, whenever that is, every other month, whenever you meet. They've got to be able to put in the work. And if they can't do that, that's fine. But they should let you know that they can't do the work and they want to give up their seat so you can get somebody in there who has the time. So this is a really complex period right now because, of course, our boards are made up of small business owners. And as we all know, because we're small business owners, there's a lot of trauma out there. A lot of boards have small businesses who are in crisis. They may have laid off almost all of their staff. So your board member may be running their business on their own. So now may not be the time for them to be on your board because they don't have anything to give to you, right? They do not have an hour a week to dedicate to the work that they said that they were going to do, whether that's planning an event, planning a mixer, doing social media, writing the newsletter, whatever those things are that they were charged with doing, they may not be able to do it. And so it's really the responsibility of board officers. So your officers are your president, your vice president, your treasurer, and your secretary to really gauge the waters with each of your board members, because oftentimes board members, their intention is not to be able to do the work, but they just can't. So it's really important for board officers to be able to sit down in a Zoom room or whatever that looks like, a social distance coffee, as Jacob suggested, to say, hey, is this still a good fit for you? You know, because things are different, particularly now. But that happens all of the time, COVID or not, where some board members can start off, they can be fantastic. And then life changes for them, their business changes, and it may not always be a good fit. So constantly engaging your board is very, very important. As Jacob mentioned, having that positivity is critical. Boards, I think oftentimes board members become board members because they want that social aspect, they want that networking piece, and that is vital. However, it's not book club, right? It's a board. And so the board has work to do. There are things that need to get done. And so that happens in the working board. So it is not that you just show up for book club, you didn't read the book, but you're just there for the wine kind of thing. You know, these are boards where you have responsibilities, you hold insurance, you have directors and officers insurance. These are real working groups. And so for those people that are new to your boards or have been around for a long time, a board orientation to remind everybody of their responsibilities, to show up, to engage, to participate, and do the work outside of the board meetings is really critical. Liz Smith is here. She's the St. John's Booster Association president, and she's the Venture Portland board president. And when I was chatting with her about this, you know, the delegation piece is so important, right? Because you don't want to end up with having one or two people doing all of the work. You are, as Jacob said, you're a team. So everybody's supposed to share the workload. So if you've got people that can't share in the work at this time, or whenever it is, you see them kind of slacking off, you know, it is important to be able to communicate like, hey, it doesn't seem like it's working out. Is this board seat a good fit for you right now? And it's okay if volunteers say, I can't, thanks for asking, I can't do it. For myself, I'm kind of wearing some doubles hats here. So I'm here obviously with Venture Portland as the executive director, but I personally volunteer on 4 boards. So I really, really understand how difficult working with boards can be. I happen to be the board president of one group, and then I'm a board member at large on 3 others. And while COVID has really hit hard, so constantly checking in with each other as board members and about the responsibilities is crucial. Having the right mix, having that positivity, I can't say it enough. It's just really, really vital, especially now. Um, and for board officers or whoever you have creating your agendas, part of that responsibility to one another is to stick to the agenda and stick to your time. So if you say our board meeting is once a month, it's the last Thursday of every month, you're obligated to stick to that unless you have some emergency. And to stick to, if it's 90 minutes, you need to stick to that to honor each other's time. So that's really important too. You know, I'm on some boards where we say, oh, it's a 60-minute meetings. It's like, we're in our second hour now. What the heck is going on? And, you know, as a board member myself, that can be really frustrating sometimes. It's like, you know, if there are 2-hour meetings, I need to know that to plan for that. So that can feel disrespectful when that goes sideways. The social aspect is important. Boards are supposed to be fun. I think we forget that sometimes. With the Venture Portland board, we recently realized, like, are we having fun yet? Right? So Liz has begun to engage with our board. We have 13 board members to try to do a fun fact at the very beginning, which I know some people don't like icebreakers, but it's a good chance to maybe have a little levity, have a little fun, and get to know each other in a more meaningful way. So a fun fact can be a way to like start to get to know each other. And I think for board members, encouraging even the buddy system is a great idea. So, you know, you as the board president are not the only person reaching out in between board meetings to engage and check in. So the buddy system can be really useful. It doesn't always work, but it can be a vital tool to say, okay, you and you're buddies. You're going to check in with each other occasionally. That type of thing can be really helpful in getting board members to continue to feel engaged and honored. And, you know, you can check in with each other if you're missing emails or you kind of got lost during the meeting and you can't find the minutes, that sort of thing. So having a buddy that you can rely on can also be, you know, it can be helpful, and it can just be a nice, you know, to have somebody in your corner can feel really, really helpful, I think. Anyway, so we could talk about duty of care forever, but I think we'll probably do that as a separate meeting. But generally the duty of care is when board members are coming in, that's their ultimate responsibility is to your group. So each of us has our own opinions about things, but you're working as a team together to accomplish certain goals. And that's something that cannot be stressed enough. So, you know, dissent is one thing, but the goal is to stick to your agenda and keep things moving forward, keep progressing. I know many boards right now are particularly really trying to make sure that they are looking to diversify their boards. So we want to ensure that we're embracing our BIPOC communities and making sure that there's space on those boards for people of color. And that is a critical task that's, I think, can be kind of harrowing, like how do I go about that? But this is that time to undertake that work too. I think it's a vital responsibility of each of us to reach out to people of color in our areas to see if they would like to engage with us. And that, as Jacob mentioned, you know, that may not be that they come on right away as a board member, but it's to engage with them, invite them to mixers, invite them to the other things that they can participate in to encourage them down the road to be board members. And the other piece I want to make sure to mention is delegation. So I go to a lot of board meetings where the board president or whomever is really in charge does not delegate. And that board president ends up doing all the work alone. I've been there. Right. So I have realized for myself as a board president that delegating is imperative. Calling people's names and saying, Liz, what responsibility are you taking on this month? Saying, you know, Emma, how are things going with the task you were planned on doing last month? Really calling people to task, because it isn't that board members don't want to help, but they don't know what they're supposed to do other than show up for the meetings. So, you know, life is for learning, right? So we're lifelong learners. We're all in this together. but really making sure that you don't leave the meeting and think, gosh, Jason over here, he never offers to do anything. Did you ask him? Right? You got to ask yourself, did you ask for that person to take on a task? So those are some critical pieces that I know it kind of can sound a little fluffy sometimes, but they are real-time pieces, and particularly with COVID, those bits are more important than ever. Thanks, Jacob.
Well, thanks, Joy. Yeah, that's really important to keep in mind as we're, thinking about, board recruitment and board retention, and what does a board look like in this weird era where it's been such a social thing, right? Where it was really dependent on those face-to-face meetings of getting to know people and getting things done, and now we're kind of faced with this, this hurdle of only being able to interact online and have, how can we make these meetings more productive just using Zoom and these sorts of interfaces. I was wondering, do you have any insights on what you've learned in the past 9 months about board meetings, how to make board meetings productive even though we can't all be in the same room together? What are some ways that you've seen that organizations have kind of embraced the Zoom life and taken the ball and run with it?
Well, that's a good question. I think we're all zoomed out, frankly, but this is our method for, keeping our groups together. So, with the boards that I sit on, most of them, I try to enter early into my own boards and encourage those that want to come and, just have a chat for a few minutes before, have that opportunity. And then again, we really, once the meeting begins, we stick to the agenda and we stick to, if it's an hour, it's an hour and we end. But I do, 10, 15, 20 minutes ahead of time, depending on the size of the board, to try to encourage people to come in and kind of do that socializing piece if they feel like it. Other ways to engage boards, which can be challenging if you're somebody kind of like me who's really trying to stay put during COVID. But another, one of the boards I'm on does this really engaging thing, and it gets a lot of enthusiasm. They do a weekly lunch. So every week I get a delivery at my door, and then we hold off, we call it a lunch, but we hold off till our meeting at 6 p.m. and then we have our meal together. So that's something that board has enough money to do, and is able to deliver. The board members themselves, they get together, they get the food together, and then they deliver it to each of us. It's a huge undertaking. They've been doing it for 26 weeks in a row, which is quite an accomplishment, but that's it's a really meaningful thing, and it does, food brings people together. So it is certainly, if you can accommodate it, even once in a while, it can be really meaningful. With Venture Portland, not for our board, but for our staff meeting, once we do little cupcakes, things like that, just to try to show a little gratitude, have a little fun, a little levity. Any way you can do that, I think is really meaningful. And I think in board meetings now more than ever, trying to continue to get to know each other is important. So at the top of the meeting, like Liz does for Venture Portland, the fun fact, in the board that I lead, we do something that's fun but related to the work. So this board that I'm the president of, it's a culinary association. And so it's something that always relates back to food, but it's a way for us to get to know each other. So a thoughtful 5 or 10 minutes at the very beginning where we're still getting to know each other. I'll give you an example. People seem to like this one across the board, but is asking everybody once they're in the board meeting to step away from the Zoom meeting for a minute, go into their kitchens, go into their pantries, and find something that they purchased at the beginning of COVID that they have not yet used, and then to bring that bottle of sauce or whatever it is, that jar of beans. That's a really fun, easy one, but those kinds of fun things, you get to know each other, people get to talk for a few minutes, you get to hear their voices, hear how they're doing. And that allows me anyway, in my role there as the board president, to also gauge how people are doing. So though it's fun for everybody to, hear from each other about, like, I bought this can of beans. I don't even like beans, but I bought this huge can of beans at the beginning of COVID. That gives me a chance to kind of hear how they're doing. Are they remaining positive? Do they seem like they're struggling, so that I can reach out to them after if necessary? So Jacob, those are just a few of the things now with Zoom board meetings that I think can be, there's that little lighthearted piece, and then, the commitment, again, to sticking to the timeline, sticking to the meeting schedule. People seem to really, really appreciate that.
That's great. I love that. As someone who, doesn't always feel comfortable, speaking out at a meeting, having those types of interactions with people to kind of get to know them a little bit better, get comfortable around them, I think is super important. So people feel comfortable helping to guide the organization moving forward. I wanted to just also touch on the concept of a working board. So you had mentioned that a little bit ago, and I wanted to just kind of pick your brain a little bit about, since boards are shrinking because, there's just fewer folks that are able to be involved, do you see boards moving towards a working board structure versus a committee structure to really dig in and do the hard work? And how does a working board really work, and how do you get people to understand that, hey, this isn't just a time for us to socialize for an hour every month. You're actually expected to work on your own, for the rest of the time. How do you get board members kind of in the zone for that?
Yeah, I mean, I have had various successes with working boards, because some boards have not always been, they haven't considered themselves working boards in the past. But through boards losing even part-time staffers, losing many of their board members due to COVID, where people had to leave, move, that sort of thing, go off the board. The working board concept is more important than ever, and it takes delegation. So it takes a strong leader. Ideally, that is the board president who is that strong leader. But if you're the board president and you're not the strong leader, you need to admit that to yourself and try to find somebody else who is, to again delegate those responsibilities. So that running list of, here are the tasks that we always do. Let's say you do, your board posts on social media 3 times a week. Okay, who is that person? And identifying that person, saying their name in the meeting, asking them how it's going, what help they need, and check that off the list. And go down the list of okay, we put out a monthly newsletter. Who's in charge of that? Calling out that person's name, giving them a chance to talk about their struggles with it if they're having a problem, and allowing that person to say, you know what, I've been doing this newsletter and I do not like it, right? And opening that up, like, okay, does anybody else want to do it? And then naming people. So Cody doesn't like doing it. Jeff, would you take it on? Being very pointed at this point is really, really critical, I think. It just can't be said enough that the strong leadership for a working board is crucial. Again, I think the buddy system idea can be helpful too, so the board president isn't the only one connecting the dots all the time and circling back all month long. But yeah, right now for many boards, they have their sizes have decreased. And so the committee structure is a great idea in theory, and it probably will be great again. But for most boards that are running with like 6 to 12 people, a committee of 1 is not a committee. A committee of 2 isn't really a committee either, right? So working as a group is the way to get things done. In ideal life, committees are great. So you've got a committee that's optimally like 6 people, and each committee has a chair. And then during the board meeting, the committee chair reports out on whatever the committee has worked on over the last month. But right now, as boards are shrinking, you don't have as many committees, or they're in name only oftentimes. So the working board pieces, each individual has that, what would have been a committee responsibility, the individual has that responsibility instead. And then of course is encouraged to reach out as needed cherry pick a couple people to help with a project, let's say, instead of saying, well, we're going to form a committee and you're going to be on this committee for a year. That's daunting at this point, frankly. It's good in theory, but in practice, it just does not appear to be working that successfully for most.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's a great segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. You know, I think it's retaining board members. So, if you have a working board and people are doing things that they're not enjoying, they're probably not going to stick around. So what are some ways to kind of get board members to stay on long term, right? Because you don't just want somebody for a couple of months. You want someone that has, this institutional knowledge that they can stay on board for, a year or 2 or 3 to really help to take the organization to the next level. So really, I think that all starts with setting expectations at the beginning, having a board job description that really makes it clear, what am I going to be expected to do and how much time is it going to take? If this is going to take, 20 hours a month and I've got, 10 other things going on, maybe this isn't the right time for me to join the board right now. So don't sugarcoat it. You don't want to bring someone on board, get them kind of involved and engaged and have tasks assigned to them and then have them realize that they just can't do it. That doesn't really serve anybody. Make sure their expertise and interests kind of fit for their role on the board. Are they interested in what they're doing, what you're asking them to do? If not, you need to recognize that and find someone else who will do it. Make sure they feel welcome. So a new board member, it's intimidating. If you're coming onto a board that has board members that have been on the board for several years, whether they are aware of it or not, there's kind of a clique mentality there, and it can be hard to break through when everybody knows each other, has all these inside jokes, is very comfortable around each other, and a new person comes in. So, as a long-term board member or a president or officer, reach out. Make sure that they are asked what their opinion is. Make sure that they are comfortable sharing. Give them an opportunity to talk about themselves because it's really tough to do that in a room full of people you don't know. If they're the only representative from a particular business sector or a particular part of the district or a particular culture, that can also be intimidating too. So, as you're recruiting board members, work to recruit others from specific sectors so they're not the only restaurant on the board or they're not the only, business from, 20 blocks away. Just things to keep in mind there. Is there dysfunction on the board? So, boards, you've got 10, 15 people in a room, they're not all going to agree. You've got, people that have, opinions, they're very passionate about what they do. There's bound to be some dysfunction between board members, but I think it's super important to recognize them up front, handle them in private, because these awkward situations happening in board meetings just suck the fun right out of the room. And for a new person that's, spending their very valuable time attending a board meeting, it's just not going to be worth it for them. So if you do have dysfunction, make sure that you're addressing it up front. And also learn to recognize the signs of burnout. People get burned out, especially this time of year, the holidays, businesses are busy, people are busy with family life. If people start to show signs of burnout, reach out to them and see if you can take something off their plate before they just end up walking away entirely. And then Joy also touched on this, practice volunteer appreciation. So that's, I think, one thing that is easy to forget, as we jump from one crisis to the next, is taking time to just really call out the hard work that people are doing and make sure that their work is recognized and important. So that could be, as simple as just publicly recognizing them in a meeting, sending them a small gift, through the mail or via delivery, whatever it might be. Everybody has different ways that they appreciate being recognized. So I think it's important to keep doing that. Joy, did I cover everything around keeping people around?
I think it could be so complex. We could have a whole, training just on that itself. But I think, particularly with COVID, I think that the reality here is that, every board probably had a work plan, had an agenda of things that they thought they were going to take on for 2020, and it fell apart, right? So just keeping your board together, that may be enough. So if normally you're planning events, fun, exciting things that you would normally be doing, it's okay to say, we can't do those right now. But what we can do is commit to each other that we're going to have this monthly meeting. We're going to do our homework in between meetings, whatever that homework looks like. We've made this commitment to each other. And let's, think towards the future, right? That the first thing is keeping the board tight, keeping the board together, keeping that dedication going, rather than, hey, we're supposed to pretend like it's 2019. It's like, no, it's not. It's 2020. So, trying to just keep that in mind as well, that things are different. Individuals are going through really challenging times, and not everybody wants to share their challenges. So getting people to show up can be enough and to just stick with the basics. So let's say for some of our boards, that's like, well, geez, we've got to try to raise some money. How can we creatively do that? That may be the one and only topic that you're covering for months. You're going to debate, well, should we have a membership campaign? What does that look like? Should we do a Zoom fundraiser? What does that look like? One or two things may be enough. And just admitting that's okay too, but I think sometimes it's hard to scrap the plans that you were excited about.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've all been dealing with these past 9 months, is the disappointment of having to realize that we can't do what we had planned to do and trying to figure out what can we do instead. So I think boards will continue to deal with that into the new year. So I wanted to take the time now that we have and open it up to the rest of the room. And I want to hear, what are you struggling with your boards? And how has COVID affected your associations? So anybody have any particular issues that they wanted to discuss or troubleshoot?
Hello.
Hey, Nancy.
Hi there.
Welcome. How's it going?
Well, I'm looking at 82nd Avenue, and it's really interesting to me how much more challenging it is to think about not being on 82nd, as a board, not being there and looking at things as much in relation to Hawthorne, which is right there. And, anyway, it's just really challenging right now. And I'm just trying to build a board for 82nd Avenue. So I think I'm up to 5 now, and I'm really pretty excited about that. But we will be sending a dues. It isn't exactly a dues reminder. It's like, we really want to know where you are and how we get a hold of you. And if you can't afford to pay any dues right now, we still consider you a member, and we would like to hear from you, so we know that you're there. And if they want to pay, then that would be wonderful. And some of them I think will. Hawthorne actually has already raised $3,000 from a month ago's membership mailing. And I was amazed and surprised and pleased that from $50 to $250 has come in from about 21, 22 members right now. Very, that was, so don't give up. I mean, really think about letting your businesses support you in your work. So anyway, it's great to see y'all.
Yeah, great to see you too. 82nd is definitely a tough nut to crack because of the size of the district. You know, it's so big, so long. It actually, you know, butts up against so many different neighborhoods where, you know, creating a sense of community for one district that's that size is really difficult. And that's why I think people get engaged with their associations, is because they want to be a part of their community. But if there's so many communities that you're serving, it gets to be really tough.
Well,
Plus,
you know, let me just say one more thing. We've been thinking about 82nd as the road to the world, because you have the airport on the north end and you have I-205 on the south end. And so we've been really trying to get that concept of 82nd Avenue is an important area in your city, and you need to check it out. And it's the road to the world. So anyway,
yeah,
plan.
I mean, the diversity in the district is a blessing, but it's also a challenge because, you know, you've got so many different languages spoken and, you know, communities that are very insular. Sometimes it can be difficult to reach out to them and to get them engaged. So totally understand that. And, you know, I'm glad to hear that you're making good progress there.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else want to share anything about challenges or experiences that they've been having on their boards lately?
And Jacob, your sound is like really quiet all of a sudden.
Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
You have hardly.
Okay. I'm gonna look
You're
into
gonna have to start yelling.
Okay.
This is Kate from CEIC. I just wanted to further the conversation with you all at Venture Portland about the city's expectations around diversity on our boards, and how there seems to be, from the city standpoint, sometimes a feeling that the business associations, just by being business associations, aren't inclusive sometimes. So I think it would be great to have a really clear expectations from them about what our best practices are in just terms of membership and board building, just as we advocate for our businesses. So.
I'm going to take a moment and amplify that, Kate, because I believe that Hawthorne Boulevard is probably one of the most diverse communities in the city of Portland. We have women-owned businesses and people of color of great magnitude. And last Thursday, we were hit with graffiti action that was totally unexpected, number one, but extremely intimidating. And as we all feel those pains from what happened on Thanksgiving Day, when most of us on this call were trying to enjoy giving thanks for all of the benefits that we do have, almost every business in a 10-block area was facing sizable damages and a message that was not a good message. Let's just go, I'll just drop it there. It was not good work that the people were doing Thanksgiving morning. So in response to that, it's been a really great feeling for the number of people who have volunteered and come out right away to abate that. The work parties, there have been at least 3 organized work parties and probably 30 disorganized work parties since Thanksgiving Day on Hawthorne Boulevard. We need to keep the lesson. We need to learn what we have. Our board has become stronger. We've got more people that want to be involved. At the end of the day, leadership will out and we will win. But in the meantime, let's keep helping each other. And so, Kate, your story about diversity on our boards rings very truly to me. And I'm going to quote something that Nancy said this morning, because we had executive meeting just to talk about this, but she's talking about celebrating cultural identity. And in response to focusing on BIPOC communities, we all need to celebrate our cultural identity, the various cultural identities that we have and that we represent. It's not good enough to just single out and try and raise one population or even a larger population of affected parties. It really depends on all of us realizing that we all have culture. We all have dysfunction. Jacob, thank you for your comment about address dysfunction up front. That was absolutely essential. We all have dysfunctions, and we all should learn and grow from those. So out of that intimidating behavior that happened on Thanksgiving, we will raise a better and stronger organization for it. That's
Thank
what I
you.
have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. And I know Bill is here too. We're so sad and so disappointed to see what happened on Hawthorne. I'm so thankful that you're there as an association to help lift those businesses up, but that was such a sadness. So thank you for taking the time to join us too. I know
Yeah.
you know, Thanksgiving turned into a different kind of event for all of you.
You know, it's been interesting to respond, you know, certainly in terms of cleanup and some of the basics that we have to do, figuring out. One thing to open our eyes to is ongoing cleanup of and keeping the street clean with graffiti. But I think the other, you know, this has been such a stressful year, and I think between you know, the protests and the marches. I've personally been part of marches, and I know a lot of people that we know have been, you know, we all have strong feelings about what's been happening. But, you know, this incident that happened last week has really started, I think, a more organized discussion around our values, because that's really what this is about. And so we're going to take some concerted effort to formalize some of those statements and really make clear what our values are as a neighborhood. And it's a tricky thing to start to do, but I think it's really important for us to really get some of those statements out there. So at the end of the day, I hope we have a cleaner street than we had before, and we have a clearer sense of who we are as a community. So we'll make good from this. Yeah,
that's great, Bill. I'm so impressed that you're really taking the high road while cleaning up the streets.
Right.
Literally out there cleaning up the street. It's like, geez.
What else are you gonna do?
Well, right, but wow, so sad about it.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we have a few minutes left here, but I want to make sure that we address a couple more questions, and we also take a few minutes, as Jacob alluded to at the beginning of this conversation. Our goal at Venture Portland is for 2021 to really talk through all of these board pieces in more detail. How do you get into detail about board recruitment, board delegation, all of these things? But of course, you know, we can't all attend trainings or create trainings every day. So we're trying to figure out what those priorities are as we put together our board training calendar for next year. So if people have things, you know, emerging priorities, or just always like, oh, I always have this particular issue with the board, you know, let's talk through those now so that we can make some good training plans for 2021. I would really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to raise something. I'm acting board president at Alberta Main Street, and we have been working on diversifying our board. We did have a fairly diverse board, and there were some instances where people felt uncomfortable or didn't feel fully engaged. And we are taking this time to, we're meeting weekly now. We usually meet monthly. We've been meeting weekly and doing an equity self-training. And so some of us are watching different videos or participating in classes online or groups or doing readings. and then reporting back with each other. And that serves two functions. One is to make us, raise our awareness as a board about DEI issues, and also to getting us to know more about each other and bringing us closer together. So that's something that I found really valuable, and taking the time. But the other thing is trying to focus on sustaining the organization, and having the board get a bond over that has been a real important part of us staying together and staying focused.
Right.
So-
That's great. That's so commendable that you're meeting every week with this focus. And that's very impressive. And, to Kate's question, like, what are the expectations, that sort of thing?
Mhm.
That's a good question too. We're trying to sort that out ourselves. So we know that, the city has some goals in mind, but they have not, in my mind anyway, have not been articulated clearly or yet. Not only what the goals are, but how do you get there? And
Yeah.
so that's something that I think we're all desirous of, but are struggling with, kind of just out here in the world, kind of doing our best. So that's something I hope that by 2021, which is only a month away, but we'll be able to do a training around that, to share what are the expectations, what are the trainings, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, today we don't really have the answers. We're in a bit of the same boat with Venture Portland. We started an equity and outreach committee, and that's trying to, take that value and make it into a real life action. But we're still struggling along too. We're watching a lot of videos, reading books, that sort of thing. But what are the real next steps to making sure that we're diverse and inclusive? These are ongoing challenges, but I am pleased that we all clearly care very much about this.
Mhm.
So what are some other things that you feel like are big priorities that you'd like to have trainings on around boards, board governance, board retention, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Now would be a great time to share. Emma, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Yeah, so I have to get going here soon, but a training that I would like to have some questions. So I became president a couple of years ago, and I inherited our bylaws and we have to have this many board members. I had to find my binder buried in one of these, cupboards to read through it to see what's going on, and they're kind of vague. And so I guess a question I have is, how often do we revamp those? Is it still, it's 4 or 5 years old, I believe, do we need to revisit that? And how we do bring on new board members and onboard them, as you mentioned earlier, making them feel welcome, giving them a job description. It really rang to me when you guys were all talking about that, because we brought on a new treasurer and he almost quit because he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. And he's agreed. I talked to him and found the binder and gave that to him. And it was a very vague description, but he just wanted something concrete. So long-winded question/request is that if you are planning trainings, that one of them be focused on setting up those bylaws. How do you bring on new members? How do you onboard board members? How long is the term? When do you how do they leave if they need to leave? Or if you have to kick somebody off.
Right. Yeah. No, Emma, I think that's such a good one. And, it is one of those things that bylaws are so dry, right? You kind of do put them in the corner somewhere, like, oh, they're there somewhere. But they are sort of your roadmap to how your board's supposed to function. And how often can you change them? And how do you go about changing them? Those are excellent questions.
And if somebody leaves and you need to fill that spot, and they leave, in the middle of their term due, adoption, we had somebody who adopted a baby. That's how I became president. She had to leave to take care of her family. And it's like, how do you bring on that new person? Do you have to vote? How many people have to vote? The quorum, just all that stuff.
Yes. I think that would be an excellent training. And I think we've had one in the past, sort of a general bylaws training. But to get into more specifics for 2021, I think that would be excellent, because I think we all have those questions. Like, okay, we're sort of beholden to these bylaws, but what are they? How do we deal with them? And we're at 1 o'clock, everybody. So I'm hoping that as you have ideas for trainings that you'd like for us to get on our docket for 2021, you will share those with us. So if you want to put them into the chat right now, we'll leave this open for another minute or so, or of course, email us. You can email me or email Jacob so that we can get to work on putting together some comprehensive trainings for boards to make all of our boards stronger and stronger as we continue to go through COVID and the recovery, the long road to recovery. I want to thank you so much for being with us and taking this hour today. It's really great to see your faces. And yeah, we're just at the beginning of, more board conversations about how do you keep a board together and all of those things. So thank you so much for being with us, and please do reach out with your suggestions and ideas. And we will see you, I hope, sometime soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great holiday. Talk to you soon.